The focus of today is today, Monday, Tesla stock price was down and heavy, 50 points. This seems somewhat unusual, but we have some really good reasons why I think this occurred and that it's no big deal. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. We also want to thank our Patreon supporters. Your support makes all the difference for the viability of the channel and is greatly appreciated. We also wanted to note this is a copyright broadcast. If you enjoy, please enjoy the show without having to copy it. Would be appreciated. So on a daily basis, we actually do a Patreon written, sometimes live show to cover items for the show for those individuals. Today's show, prior to the market opening, we actually sent out a note regarding several data points affecting Tesla. The first data point is that China is going through a fairly steep bump in the number of COVID cases that they have. This increase in COVID cases has resulted in lockdowns, etc. And I actually thought that the lockdown in Shanghai was kind of over, with the reason being that the Tesla has come up with a deal with the Chinese government where they actually freeze the number of employees that are in the factory. So it was my estimation that we would actually have the whole lockdown not be an issue. The problem that's happened is that there are certain entities, and Tesla has not been one of those entities yet, that's gotten permission to actually ship vehicles in or ship parts in from different parts of the country so they can build cars. This requires a special exemption for the truck drivers to be able to get those parts into the factory, and therefore they can be produced. Because this special pass has not occurred, there aren't any parts to use to build, so they got all the employees. They're ready to build if they could get parts, but they can't. The other back end of this is if you have lockdowns, in theory, it might be difficult to sell vehicles, but as you also know, Tesla's actually come up with a process where for test drives and other things now, there's no longer a human being there. They can actually do COVID-managed deliveries where the vehicles are left in front of your home or in your parking space, etc. So there's actually no human contact on deliveries, facilitating that part of the deal well. So, basically factory cannot reopen. The second piece of data that came out is in December, if you check, there were 73,000 vehicles that came out of Shanghai. So if you multiply 73,000 times 12, even though you're ballparking on 1 million vehicles there, you could see what the trend was. But because a number of these issues, we just got a report that in March, the actual number produced/sold was 65,000 vehicles from that facility. Now, obviously, there's some question marks about it. Once they were produced, how many vehicles were sold in country or were shipped to Europe? All that breakdown of the data is not there. But based on how the quarters tend to work for Tesla right now, they tend to, at the front end of the quarter, make vehicles that are shipped globally if they're going, and then the remainder of the quarter will be domestic vehicles. So in theory, the 65,000 vehicles would stay in China versus being shipped out, or perhaps close in nearby countries. So the overall here is things are not looking great. Sales are affected by the lockdown, number one, and number two, we also have this problem of lack of access to parts. I guess I have to say I'm impressed by Tesla's creativity, because it turns out that one of the things that's going on right now is Fremont is actually producing and shipping to Taiwan and Korea And so there's the marketplace beyond China that can still be surfaced from the United States if needed. It costs a little bit for that shipping, obviously. And in theory, the components, particularly the cattle batteries, are cheaper. So I would say that it's probably a more expensive vehicle to produce based on those variables. So what this also illustrates is that Elon and Tesla are fairly innovative in terms of being able to move production to where they can do it and away from where they cannot do it for whatever the reasons might be, and therefore get product out. So I believe that yes, China will be affected in the numbers. I believe that if it's about a month's worth of production that's affected at this point, I think we're a couple of weeks of production in to this lockdown. I would say anything less than a month-ish is pretty easy to solve by simply making deliveries from other factories or etc. Clearly the numbers within China might be challenged here because typically Tesla hasn't been shipping vehicles into China from the US, but that's also a possibility if needed. The other thing that's going on right now is something that I'll call loose production. So what seems to be going on is that, you can roll out the time for delivery for vehicles to certain customers and therefore have a loose amount of production you could do that could swing into action to other places if need be. So I believe that, the dip in price is related to somewhat bad news just articulated on what's going on with Tesla, particularly in China. But I don't think that sort of negative trend takes into consideration everything that's happening in other parts of the world to help sort of fill the gap or fill the hole. And so therefore, I would say that Tesla's in really good shape. And I think that they'll meet or exceed numbers expected. I would say the only bad or potentially bad issue that I see happening is how's the ramping going at the two new factories? The answer is usually it takes, a few months, maybe 6 months to get that at full bore. And for both factories, we're talking 250K cars per quarter, I think, would be a sort of medium level ramp with a 1 year out expected to go to at least 500,000 for the annualized production coming out of that factory. So where are we on this? The answer is we don't have all the answers. All the negative news, a la what I just described, is well documented and baked into the stock. All the positive news, which I also just described, of the flexibility of the company and what they're doing, has not been baked in. So therefore, we're in a situation where if we're weighted towards bad news, we get what we're experiencing in terms of stock price dip. But if we are weighted towards the good news that's coming out, which I think earnings will bring forward, then it's a different deal in terms of where the numbers are. As you know, Elon has a thing about being light on detailed information that the analysts can use to really get their arms around what's going on. And because that's not done by him, we're stuck in this, well, we don't know how well you're doing or how bad you're doing, so therefore we have to take sort of the negative angle based on lack of definable data. Nobody's come out with it yet, but somebody's going to start doing the sleep around the clock at the factory and watch how many trucks leave, so you can start to dial in how many vehicles are being produced. And I don't know what the answer to this is right now, but as we all know, Elon is one for big surprises, and those surprises result in things running usually better than expected. So where do I think we are right now? I think we're fine in terms of numbers for the quarter. That quarter's already ended. The lockdown happened afterward. We already have the real production number, and now we're going to find out how many cars were also produced. I think the number is 100,000, which would help this quarter a great deal, but it may be lower than that, and perhaps it might be higher as well. regardless, because of the two new factories opening, we're only waiting on ramp and what the ramp results in car count. So stay tuned. We'll update you as we know what's going on. But these negative sort of outcomes, I believe, are affecting current numbers on Tesla and by default affecting the stock price. This is the end of our formal program. We just wanted to mention our usual health tips. Wanted to encourage you to try to maintain the same sleep schedule for 2 weeks, because if you can do that, you end up locking in the circadian rhythms and getting better rest and more comfortable rest in the process. At any rate, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss German, au revoir French, Lehithro, Hebrew, Choda Hafez, Farsi, Strajvice, Russian, Ni Hao Ma, Chinese, Kambawa, Japanese, Heido, Swedish. And in Jamaica we say enough respect, walk good, namaste.